All right. Hey, everybody. I went through this yesterday, but I wanted to make sure that the directions were available and that if anybody missed, they would have access to this. So, kind of the quick directions on the unit assessment if you need the reminder. I'm asking you to compare and contrast the information we studied on the African American civil rights movement with another rights movement from this period. Compare and contrast means we're looking at how are they similar and how are they different. Okay, so the movements you have to pick from are down here. Well, there's 6. So you can choose the farm worker movement that we saw in the video with Cesar Chavez and others. You can pick the women's rights movement that we looked at yesterday with the stuff on feminism. You can also choose indigenous rights by looking at the American Indian movement. You can look at the college students who were behind the free speech movement and the Students for a Democratic Society, SDS. You can choose the environmental movement and look at the origins of Earth Day and Rachel Carson, or you could get into LGBTQ rights and look at Stonewall and the kind of beginnings of that movement. In your work, you're going to be looking at what are the goals of the movements, who are the leaders, important leaders, what methods did they use to try to make change, what were some of the successes of that movement, and what were some of the limitations of the movement. So again, we're looking at 2 different movements. We're comparing and contrasting. Okay, how are they similar? How are they different? A key thing here is the time period needs to be 1950 to 1975. I can't tell you how many times I've had students turn in something on the women's movement, and they're talking about voting rights from the 1920s or worse, stuff that was happening in the 1800s. We're focusing in on this period during kind of the civil rights era. So that should be your focus point, okay? If you use our textbook, there's a link right here, or you use the links. These are to Digital History, another textbook. That's going to give you the information that you need. If you just go into Google and type in women's rights movement, you're going to get all kinds of stuff that may or may not fit. So start with our textbook, start with the links that I give you here, okay? What you're going to do then is fill out basically this chart right here. So it's described in these bullet points. We have an introduction where you are telling us an overview of the African American Civil Rights Movement, and then you introduce me to whatever your second choice is so that I know what you're comparing to. And then we're going through goals, leaders, methods, successes, limitations. So you're going to list that information for each of the movements, and then you'll have a conclusion, and the conclusion says at least one good paragraph that compares and contrasts your topics. How are they similar? How are they different? Okay, so you're going to have information for this African American Civil Rights Movement on this side. Your second movement, you'll have the information over here, and then the conclusion is you having an in-depth kind of discussion about how they're similar and different. Okay, pretty straightforward. You see the scoring right here. You will have Thursday, Friday, and then Monday to work on these, which should be plenty of time. I would say start with the African American Civil Rights Movement because we have been studying that in depth, and you should have some material on your study guide to use to kind of go right into that. Make sure that when you're giving me important leaders, you tell me more than Dr. King and Rosa Parks. Okay, there are lots of pretty significant people. Use your reading guide, your study guide for the chapter to maybe identify some of the key people and why they're key people. Same thing goes with, we talked pretty in depth about some of the different methods that were being used. So give me some specifics in terms of goals. Ending racism is part of it, but I want more specifics and in-depth. So use the information from our study. I am expecting to see specific details here, okay? That's all I got. Good luck. Use your time. Be nice to the sub.